In the legendary story of an ordinary hero in the parallel time and space of the 1980s, Liang Yongtao was on the verge of retirement. On his way out of work, he encountered a knife-wielding crime, and after being killed, he was slandered as a rogue and his wandering soul. Watching his two daughters desperately clear themselves up, he was ultimately drowned in the overwhelming online violence. Just as Liang Yongtao was in despair, a cloud group claiming to be a righteous hero system approached him. In order to clear himself, Liang Yongtao ultimately chose to bind with the cloud group. Liang Yongtao returned to the 1980s due to the clouds, making up for many regrets of his youth. By chance, I entered Xinjiang and devoted myself to the entertainment industry. With my courage and determination, I gradually brought Chinese cinema to the world and became an actor. Undercover, he even helped the police solve countless major cases and became a shadow of the enemy who feared the news. Chapter 1. Terrifying Cyber Violence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Grab it. I've been working all day and I just want to watch a video to relax. These days, I've been watching these two women come out and sell their lives. Isn't it annoying? That's right. My father is disrespectful to others, and even at an advanced age, he still wants to take action against college students. This scumbag will die if he dies. How could he be willing to come out every day to whitewash? Agree upstairs. If it were for me, I would have been hiding at home every day. How could I have shamelessly come out? Agree to add +1. These two women probably want to ride on the popularity of their rogue father and become internet celebrities. I bet these two women will definitely come out to bring goods in a while. I'm sorry, people nowadays really have no bottom line. Dare to rub against any heat. Garbage. The advice from upstairs is to keep your mouth shut. After all, the deceased is a big one. The court hasn't even ruled yet. Do you know he's a thug? You guys are really capable. Even better than the court. Somehow, he is still a retired soldier, and the police are still investigating. The case has not been finalized yet. You are one by one like Sherlock. His mother Holmes. How many pounds and Liang do you weigh? Don't you have any AC count in your heart? Yes. The injured girl is still unconscious and the case has not been investigated yet. Please pay attention to the official notice and do not follow the crowd. The internet is not an illegal place. Who's the kind-hearted dad who's dead and still dresses up so beautifully every day? At first glance, they just want to attract attention and earn traffic. Damn it. Don't talk nonsense if you don't know one by one. Teacher Liang is already a very knowledgeable and elegant good teacher, and these are the clothes she usually wears. She has been wearing them for 2 or 3 years now. I am a student of teacher Liang, and I earnestly request that the eyewitnesses at that time come forward to testify. I am also a student of teacher Liang, and I earnestly request the eyewitnesses present at the time to testify in court and provide justice to the parties involved. You children don't know how to know people, face, or heart yet. Don't get involved in these things. Go home and do your homework quickly. Liang Wenqing and Liang Wenjiao's sisters looked at the screen full of bullets, and there were a few positive and fair comments sporadically, which were quickly brushed off by the malicious screen. These days, they have received a lot of phone calls and private letters. None of the witnesses has been able to really provide clues. Both sisters feel deeply hopeless. In any case, neither of the sisters believed that the father who taught them to be honest and kind-hearted when they were young would be a lecher trying to hurt female college students. It has been half a month since the police called to inform their father of his death. The sisters have been actively using their meager power to find clues through the internet to clean up their father's stigma. As a result, the days of the sisters have become a mess. Every day, there will be endless abusive calls and private messages. What the sisters who were encouraging each other to get warm at this time did not know was that they were squatting in front of a transparent figure. Although they were not young, their backs were still straight. I am anxiously reaching out and trying to pat their heads like they did when they were children, wiping away their tears. But in vain, passing through their faces time and time again the transparent figure, with red eyes and stubbornly repeating movements, refused to give up. Liang Yongtao thought of his mediocre life in his previous life. Although he had never done anything heroic, he had never done anything outrageous or bad. How could saving a girl on her 60th birthday and risking her own life? Seeing that he will soon end his life in Baipiao and retire to his hometown for retirement, why did fate play such a big joke on him? Every time he thought of the scene where his soul drifted around his two daughters, Liang Yongtao gritted his teeth in hatred. I am really old, and time never forgives me. I never expected to end up falling into the hands of a lunatic who has no strength to restrain himself. I thought that if I had taken this old life, I could never get a reward for bravery and righteousness. I could leave some honor bonuses for the two daughters and even give the children a long face. Unexpectedly, the two turtle sons named Xian Lu and Shifeng actually turned the tables and wrongly accused themselves of being a pervert. The overwhelming online violence these days has tormented the two daughters who came to handle their own affairs, causing unbearable pain. The two daughters dared not easily answer their phones, and various insulting calls and messages came one after another. Liang Yongtao felt so sorry that he wished to break down the keyboard warriors who knew the truth and just spouted it randomly. Two girls held up signs seeking witnesses and stood at the intersection of the alley where they were killed for 2 days and 2 nights without any results. Even being thrown stones, rotten leaves, and eggs by some so-called enthusiastic masses who ran out of nowhere. Liang Yongtao's eyes were filled with resentment as he clenched his fists and rushed forward to punch those who were bullying his daughter. However, he also passed through their bodies and went back and forth several times. No matter how much he roared, it was useless. Just when Liang Yongtao was most desperate, a mechanical sound came to his mind, just like his voice assistant on a smartphone being rigid. Dear. Hello. I am the system number 581 for righteous deeds. I have detected that you are helpful and a good person who conforms to the principles of 5 lectures, 4 beauties, and 3 passions. May I ask if you agree to bind the system to promote the spirit of righteous deeds together with 581 and make society more harmonious and beautiful? Liang Yongtao, who was in a state of soul, was about to fall into a state of madness. His eyes turned red as he heard this nonsense in his mind, and at this moment he was even called to act bravely. Liang Yongtao cursed at the voice with hatred. Get out of your mother. Didi, dear host, we have detected that you are swearing profusely, which is not in line with your love for speaking, beauty. We believe that you will be silenced. We hope that you will pay attention to civilization next time, and the system will serve you wholeheartedly. No matter what kind of thing you are, climb away from me. Having implicated his 2 daughters, Liang Yongtao hates his meddling self to the death, but at this moment he can only be powerless and furious. I wish I could tear apart the ghost in my mind that still calls him to act bravely. Zizizi. The system has been attacked for unknown reasons, with data being scrambled and temporarily disconnected from the host. Zizizi. Liang Yongtao saw a white cloud suddenly appear in front of him, just like in an animated film, with cute facial features personified. Although his appearance is a bit cute, it is obvious that Liang Yongtao cannot get it at this time. The cloud that detached from Liang Yongtao spun around in the air and checked his internal data. After a while, I realized there was nothing unusual again and couldn't figure out what attacked it. If she couldn't figure it out, she stopped thinking, so Xia Yunduo threw her doubts aside and looked at Liang Yongtao in front of her with red eyes and a pale and haggard expression. I've detected that you're not in a good mood now. Do you need 581 to tell you a joke? The righteous and brave system is dedicated to serving you, he said with a cute smile. Chapter 2. System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Liang Yongtao, who was originally furious, was stunned by the sudden appearance of the cloud in front of him. He couldn't help it anymore and rushed towards the cloud with a loud shout, "Ah! I killed you *****. I thought this cloud could only be seen but not touched, but I didn't expect that when Liang Yongtao's hand grabbed the cloud and tore it apart fiercely, a cold and soft touch came from his hand. The torn clouds penetrated into Liang Yongtao's soul like mist, and Liang Yongtao suddenly felt his mind clear. The previously lost rationality seemed to have returned a bit. The fleeting sense of weightlessness suddenly disappeared, like when I was still alive, with a feeling of being down to earth. Before Liang Yongtao could even think about it, he saw a sneaky person at the entrance of the court, mixing in the noisy crowd. He approached his two daughters with a bucket of red paint in his hand, and his eyes were torn as he rushed towards that person. Liang Yongtao blocked the two daughters at an unimaginable speed, and waved his right hand vigorously towards the man who was carrying and stabbing. The bucket that was about to be thrown forward suddenly fell off its head in a strong wind. The angry crowd standing in the front row was suddenly splattered with paint all over their faces, causing chaos on the scene. Screams and screams kept coming, causing a commotion. Many people were pushed to the ground, and just as the stampede accident was about to expand on a large scale, the sound of the police siren increased from far to near. A dozen or so police officers quickly got off the car and, after an orderly evacuation command, quickly took control of the scene. An ambulance also followed, and the scene was quickly evacuated, leaving only a mess to prove the liveliness that had just occurred here. The two daughters finally left the scene in embarrassment under the protection of their son. In law now, apart from being invisible to others, he is no different from ordinary people. Liang Yongtao is very surprised and doesn't understand what he really is now. Just as Liang Yongtao was studying himself, a child's scream suddenly came to his mind. Ah! 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 Help! What's going on? Damn it! I'll just walk away for a while. Why is my energy so low again? What exactly happened? Those guys from the Research Institute don't say that this intelligent system is 100% user-friendly and very user-friendly. Why did such a big mess happen in just a while? Liang Yongtao heard the additional child voice in his mind and remembered the cloud that he had just torn apart. It seemed like he realized that his ability to stabilize his soul began with absorbing that cloud. Liang Yongtao didn't care if the thing that came out of his mind again was a demon or a ghost, and he hated to say, "What kind of thing are you? Get out of here for me." A child's voice filled with surprise rang out again. What situation? How could you interfere with obtaining my data? Because of these consecutive experiences, Liang Yongtao, who was originally calm and cheerful, became irritable. Seeing that this unknown thing didn't answer the question, I had no patience and reached out to grab my head. Ah! How could that be? How could you catch me? Who the hell are you? Liang Yongtao's hand passed through his soul and caught a familiar cold and soft lump from the source of his voice. Watching the vivid and three-dimensional features of the big cloud in his hand tremble, his vivid big eyes revealed fear, probably due to the blush on his cheeks due to struggle. When Liang Yongtao used to watch cartoons with his grandchildren, he would find these anthropomorphic clouds, flowers, and birds very cute. But at this moment, looking at the cute ghost in his hand, Liang Yongtao couldn't show any mercy. I'll give you one last chance, let me explain clearly. What exactly are you and that little thing before? Why did it appear in my mind? What are your intentions? Liang Yongtao's gaze towards the lovely clouds was cold and heartless. He had already thought of the first time a strange mechanical sound appeared in his mind, which was too sudden and caused him to hurt his waist. Although there was no direct reason why he was killed by that madman and the ghost that appeared in his mind, his waist injury was indeed one of the reasons that slowed down his reaction when he fought against that madman in the end. De Yuntuan felt a strong threat of death and quickly promised, "I'll tell you what. Don't be impulsive and listen to me explain slowly. I am not something bad, I come from China 500 years later, and I am a small Lingyun of the Lingyun tribe. History records that in your current time period, due to the large amount of nuclear wastewater thrown into the sea by country R, it caused marine pollution, resulting in an ecological crisis and triggering a 30-year apocalyptic period, lowering human moral standards to primitive times. The reason why humans are humans is different from other animals that drink blood and feed on their fur, because humans are beings with thoughts and emotions. The crisis of extinction triggered the barrier set by the divine dragon to protect China, awakening the dormant divine dragon. Because this world is the end of the Dharma era, after the awakening of the divine dragon, due to insufficient spiritual energy, it is not enough to protect China in this devastated world. So, with no choice but to tear down the barrier of this small world and merge back into the three realms of human demons and immortals, the spiritual energy can be revived. In ancient times, the human realm was originally the most vulnerable among the three realms of humans, demons, and immortals, and was often used as prey by fairies. The battles between the immortal and demon realms also often involved the human realm. Causing constant disasters and difficulties in the human world, the divine dragon was adopted and incubated by humans for several years before it even hatched due to an accident. The young dragon lived a happy life in the human world, but was later implicated in the battle between the immortal and demon realms, and his family was killed. From then on, the young dragon protected the human race in the human realm. The human race was grateful and believed in the young dragon, and the power of faith helped the young dragon eventually become a divine dragon. Even the divine dragon could not take care of it at times, and there were still human beings being killed one after another. Helplessly, the divine dragon used up most of its spiritual power to set up a barrier, and from then on, the human realm separated from the three realms. The spiritual power of the independent human realm is decreasing day by day, unable to withstand the daily consumption needs of the divine dragon, and the divine dragon ultimately has to choose to sleep. Until the emergence of the crisis of extinction, the divine dragon had no choice but to wake up. I am Lingyun, raised by the human race. As I am intangible and can travel through time and space, I have been sent to this time period in the hope of preventing the crisis of extinction and preserving the excellent qualities of humanity. Through the changes of the times, the future Chinese people have mastered the methods of scientific cultivation and developed artificial intelligence systems to assist our Lingyun in better completing tasks. Who knew this thing was not mature at all? It was just an artificial intelligence disability. Woo-woo. I have wasted so much energy again. Woo-woo. Chapter 3. Unlucky Little Lingyun. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. What does Chapter 4 mean by time travel? I know. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Liang Yongtao felt like he was no longer shaking and wanted to vomit. Finally, he felt like his life was saved, and he lost consciousness in a daze. Liang Yongtao felt as if he was dreaming, and his experience from childhood to adulthood was repeated. Liang Yongtao thought that memories that had faded away with time would reappear clearly in front of him. I was born in 63 years ago, and by that time I had already passed the most severe natural disaster period. Although life was also difficult, at least the sweet potato, pumpkin, and bracts combined could still satisfy me. My parents gave birth to a total of 7 children, and I ranked 5th. The top 2 brothers and grandparents couldn't get through that 3 years. Third sister was weak and finally managed to take care of her. Siggy almost starved to death when he was 60 years old. According to the elderly in the village, his unreliable father had already put Siggy in a basket and planned to bury him in the back mountain. Passing by the door of an old man's house, he was kind-hearted and found that the 4th brother in the basket still had a slight rise and fall in his chest. He couldn't bear it and only rescued him after feeding a bowl of rice soup. I have 2 younger sisters below me, and my mother passed away when I was 10 years old. There's only one dad left who doesn't care about his food and doesn't worry about anything. When 4th brother grew up, he also looked like his father very much. When he found something to eat, he only cared about himself. Both myself and my 2 younger sisters rely on the work of the 3rd sister, who works tirelessly from dawn to dusk. Because she is good at needlework, the 3rd sister will secretly help with some sewing, mending, and exchanging food to avoid starving to death. Since the 3rd sister got married, this family has only left me with 2 young sisters, struggling to make ends meet. Since I have memories, I have never known what it feels like to be full. It wasn't until I entered the army at the age of 18 that I was fully fed for the first time. The memory of walking like a horse lantern lasted until I joined the army. At the beginning, due to insufficient snacks, I suffered from malnutrition and couldn't keep up with training. I often gritted my teeth and persisted, but could only barely maintain a moderate level. Later, with his fearless spirit, he firmly stood firm in the army. Later, because his first love girlfriend and his family strongly demanded that he retire from the military and return home before getting married, he was young and immature, and his mind quickly agreed. Unfortunately, their relationship ended in nothing and eventually became a lifelong regret for themselves. Half asleep and half awake, Liang Yongtao heard a strange man's voice and asked anxiously, "Doctor, what's wrong with this comrade?" "It's not a big deal, but this comrade is suffering from malnutrition and physical exhaustion. Wait a moment, I'll hang some salt water for him, take a break, and he'll be fine. After discharge, I have the condition to buy some eggs and nutritional supplements as a supplement." The young man is still young and growing taller. The doctor in a white coat spoke calmly. Not long after, Liang Yongtao felt a chill on the back of his hand, and then a slight tingling cold liquid slowly flowed into his body along the back of his hand. After a while, his mind seemed to clear up a bit. After a while, there was no more sound in the medical room, and Liang Yongtao slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the white ceiling, smelling the smell of disinfectant in the air, hearing footsteps walking back and forth in the hallway outside the ward, and some conversations. After confirming that no one would come for the time being, he shouted in his mind, "Lingyun, are you there? Didn't you say you wanted to help me clear the suspicion and clear my name? What do you mean by bringing me here? I haven't received any response for a while." Liang Yongtao cursed inwardly, "You dog, you can't rely on me at critical moments." Looking back at this point, perhaps because half of the bottle of salt water had already hung, Liang Yongtao felt some strength in his body. I secretly pondered to myself, what's the situation now? Is it that the energy consumption mentioned by the cloud is too much and it's sleeping? At this moment, footsteps could be heard at the door, and Liang Yongtao had already half sat up and looked out the door. I saw a person wearing a familiar old-fashioned military uniform entering the door. It looks like she's around 17 or 18 years old, less than 1.7 meters tall, with a delicate appearance and clear yet firm eyes. After seeing Liang Yongtao wake up, his eyes showed surprise and he walked a few steps towards Liang Yongtao's hospital bed, holding the lunchbox in his hand. "Comrade Liang, you finally woke up. It's really great. My name is Li Xiangyang, and I'm very sorry for accidentally stepping on your pants and causing you to be injured. How are you feeling now? Is there anything else that's uncomfortable?" Liang Yongtao looked at the young soldier named Li Xiangyang in front of him and remembered that he was participating in a heavy off-road race before fainting this time. He felt like he had tripped and fallen. I vaguely remembered that there was indeed such a thing in my previous life. I lazily took off my pants and planned to wear them together more easily. As a result, during the running process, the autumn pants slipped and slowly fell off the legs, as if they had been stepped on by an unknown comrade. But that time it was just a fall and I didn't faint. The fainting of oneself has nothing to do with him, it must be the ghost caused by that cloud. Because Liang Yongtao remained silent for a long time, Li Xiangyang became even more anxious, afraid that comrade Liang Yongtao's carelessness would lead to some illness in his mind, which would make him guilty. As Li Xiangyang was about to cry, Liang Yongtao could only forcefully suppress his restless mood. Helplessly comforting, "Comrade Li Xiangyang, please don't cry. I'm fine. I can go home when this bottle of salt water is ready." Li Xiangyang observed and confirmed that Liang Yongtao's complexion and spirit had significantly improved, so he breathed a sigh of relief in secret. I quickly picked up the aluminum lunch box next to me, opened the lid, and said, "Comrade Liang Yongtao, I'm very sorry. It was all my fault that caused you to faint from injury. Don't worry, I'll take care of you during this time when you're injured. I promise to take good care of you. Although Liang Yongtao has mixed feelings here and now, he is not really a rough guy. You still need to understand human relationships and worldly wisdom, so you can only muster up your spirit and politely say, comradely Xiangyang, you don't have to mind. I also have problems myself, so you don't have to worry about it. After hanging this bottle of salt water, I will be discharged from the hospital. Inside the lunchbox is a dish of cold mixed noodles, with an egg lying on top, paired with scallions and cilantro, which looks very appetizing. Food has also been put with great care in future generations, let alone now. Liang Yongtao has never eaten anything since the incident. Of course, after wandering for almost a month, there was no need to eat at that time. Now with a young body and a hungry stomach, I couldn't help but take the lunchbox with one hand and put it on the table next to the hospital bed to eat on my own. The old saying goes, iron rice is steel. Without a meal, Liang Yongtao's restless and wandering heart was immediately comforted by the delicious food. Just as he was pondering what to do next, the child voice in his mind finally had a response. Master, congratulations on receiving a sincere and grateful heart. Add 10 points to your energy points. Master, you are truly amazing. Master, let me introduce you to the current situation now. According to the data, we have now traveled back to the 1980s in Xinhua and are now in the early stages of reform and opening up. People are emerging from a closed and stagnant environment. Although the current environment is still very difficult, people are full of hope for the future, which is a passionate era. More conducive to completing our tasks. Master, let me explain in detail what time travel means. Liang Yongtao couldn't bear the noise of this cloud and interrupted, I know what crossing means. You don't have to talk too much. How can you clean up my reputation and protect my daughter when you bring me here? As a small video blogger with tens of thousands of followers, where else does one need to be educated about what time travel is? Chapter 5. Dreaming back to the military camp. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 6. Is, what's making a noise in my head? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Rao is Liang Yongtao, who is usually an exceptionally cheerful little old man, but for the rest of his life, he remains carefree and unrestrained. But on this special day, looking at the big family and children ahead, enjoying the joy of family life with their grandchildren, a strong sense of loneliness cannot be avoided in my heart. Nights are always full of emotions, and a tired body makes one's heart fragile. Unknowingly, some melancholy surged onto the brow. Liang Yongtao thought to himself, it has been more than half a year since I last saw my 2 grandsons, and I don't know how those 2 children are now. Have they grown taller again? Fortunately, I retired after finishing this year, and I don't have to go out after returning to my hometown at the end of the year. Immediately, a glimmer of anticipation flashed through my heart. Liang Yongtao, who was stunned, was awakened by a loud noise. When Liang Yongtao realized it, he saw a young man wearing takeout clothes riding an electric scooter, turning left and right on the sidewalk. A group of strollers complained incessantly, and the young man apologized repeatedly, but the speed still did not slow down. It was evident that the young man was in a hurry, with beads of sweat as big as beans rolling down his forehead. As he turned past the flower bed in front of Liang Yongtao, a large bunch of hydrogen balloons suddenly blocked the young man's line of sight. The young man was so scared that he screamed in shock, make way for the trouble ahead." Liang Yongtao watched as the siblings were still chasing and frolicking, unconsciously chasing them from the park to the sidewalk. One of the younger brothers was facing the delivery boy with his back facing away, making a face at his sister while backing down. "Tell you to pinch my marshmallows, are you ready now? Do you dare to do it again next time?" The little girl stomped her feet in anger when she saw the only egg-sized lump left on her bamboo stick. "Striving to catch up and show off to my stinky little brother, I saw a crooked electric scooter crashing straight into my brother." The little girl was so scared that she shouted, Lay, get out of the way. Get out of the way. There's a car behind me." At this moment, the parents following behind were also frightened and quickened their pace, running towards the little boy. The delivery boy finally managed to get his head out of a pile of hydrogen balloons when he saw a little boy walking backwards in front of him, and was immediately frightened. Due to the speed, although the young man had already squeezed the brakes, he couldn't stop the electric scooter from colliding with the boy. The young man was about to collide with the boy, so he had to forcefully turn the faucet of the car to the left. The electric scooter lost its balance, and the delivery boy couldn't control his body. He fell to the ground with a bang, and the scooter overturned and slid over a meter, crashing straight into the boy. Just as he noticed that everyone here was shocked, Liang Yongtao threw away the package in his arms and rushed towards the boy, picking him up and turning sideways to avoid the oncoming electric scooter. Just as Liang Yongtao thought he was fine, a mechanical electronic sound suddenly came to his mind. Intermittent, as if the signal is not good while playing the video. Didi, searching for the host. Matching person has been successfully found. Do you agree to bind? Liang Yongtao felt very uncomfortable due to the sound that rang directly in his brain. With a slight frown and a puzzled expression, he said, yes. What's making noise in my head? The electronic voice seemed to be afraid of Liang Yongtao's reaction, directly blocking the words behind and quickly saying, "Drip, the host has agreed to bind. Successfully bound." Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz seconds later, the brain returned to calm. The whole process took only half a minute, and Liang Yongtao thought he had hallucinations and didn't have time to think much. When Liang Yongtao felt a faint pain in his waist, he remembered that the mechanical sound that had just appeared in his mind had distracted him, causing his waist to collide with the flower bed. Helplessly sighed, "I'm getting old, I'm no longer useful, and I'm starting to feel dizzy and dizzy." The little boy's father hurriedly ran closer and took the child from Liang Yongtao's hand. He looked up and down and found that the child was not in a big deal. After feeling a little scared, he rubbed the boy's head hard and said sternly, "You stinky kid, dare not look at the road again next time. Go back and see how I'll deal with you." Then he lifted his head and looked at Liang Yongtao, who had just saved his son. He bowed slightly and extended his right hand, saying very politely, "Sir, what is your surname? Thank you very much for saving my son. Are you unharmed?" Liang Yongtao worked at the book building for several years, although he was used to meeting cultural figures. But seeing the man's polite attitude, I felt a little embarrassed and wiped my hand, then shook it back. "I'm fine. It's normal for a child to be mischievous, but next time, don't play around on the road. It's still very dangerous with too many people and cars," he said at this moment. The mother of the child also rushed up and asked the little boy carefully again. After confirming that her son was okay, she breathed a long sigh of relief. Before I could express my gratitude to Liang Yongtao, the young man who had just fallen for a while limped and panicked as he walked over, bending over and apologizing to the couple. "Sorry. I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry and it's all my fault that I didn't see clearly. I almost bumped into my little brother. Can you see if he's injured somewhere? Let's take him to the hospital together for a check. Up. I will definitely compensate for the medical expenses." At this moment, the child's grandparents finally arrived and learned that their grandson was not in any big trouble, so they all turned their attention to the delivery boy. After the child's grandfather saw the young man bowing and apologizing, his face looked slightly surprised and he said, "Xiaozhua, why are you?" The young man who was called Xiaozhua heard a familiar voice and looked up. When he saw clearly that the elderly person in front of him was the strictest teacher in their department at his school, Zhang, he became even more anxious. "Professor Zhang, I'm really sorry. I was thinking of working hard and studying, so I took on a part-time job at night to deliver some takeout. It was almost time out and I didn't see it clearly. I'm really sorry," he said hastily, speaking of which, the young man named Xiaozhua's tone was already slightly choked up. Professor Zhang's brow, which often frowned seriously, is now even more furrowed. Looking at the young man's disheveled appearance, Professor Zhang didn't blame him too much. He turned to Liang Yongtao and said, "Sir, this is my student. I think he has been slightly injured and plans to go to the hospital together for a check-up. Do you think you want to go with us for a check-up?" Liang Yongtao felt that his waist was not a big deal, but he had a slight cramp. It was so late and he just wanted to go back for some food. He politely declined. "You don't need to be polite, I have nothing to do. You go. If I have anything else to do, I'll go back first." At this moment, the child's mother had already picked up the package that Liang Yongtao had thrown away and handed it to him. "Thank you very much for saving my son. Please check if there is any damage to the things. If there is any damage, we will compensate you," he said politely. Chapter 7. Seeing the Road Unequally. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8. Nightmares. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Liang Yongtao finally understood. It turned out to be a bloody drama about a domestic violence man chasing his wife at a crematorium. Liang Yongtao doesn't consider himself a good man, but what he looks down on the most is this kind of coward who only knows how to fight women horizontally in his den. He couldn't help but say a fair word. Is your relationship with your girlfriend related to the little girl? Who knows what you want to do with your tracking of the girl at night? Which one is asking for forgiveness like this? When Shifeng heard this meddlesome old man chattering here, he immediately felt a great hatred in his heart. But he could only continue to speak sincerely. "Uncle, you see that Guojiang and I are also friends. It was a misunderstanding just now. Why don't you let go of me first? I promise I won't be impulsive anymore. Can you speak up well?" Liang Yongtao looked up at Guojiang and asked, "Little girl, what have you decided to do about this? Do you want to call the police? If you want to call the police, I'll testify to you." Guojiang looked at Shifeng and thought of his entangled relationship with his own friends over the past 2 years. He didn't know what to do for a moment. But after all, there hasn't been an accident yet. If we report it to the police, at most we can educate him. Based on my usual understanding of Shifeng from my friends, he is a rather extreme person. If the police report completely offends him, I will have to wait for half a year to graduate, and now that she has not suffered any substantial harm, I won't be able to keep him for long. I'm afraid he will retaliate against me if he comes out. So he said to Liang Yongtao, "Uncle, why don't we just forget about this time? Thank you. Let's talk slowly ourselves." Liang Yongtao and Guojiang also thought of going together. If we had to send this man to the police station, we wouldn't have retaliated against this girl after he came out. It would have been a great help. Liang Yongtao looked at Shifeng's now calm and refined demeanor, then let go of his hand and stood up to pat the dust on his body. He said to Shifeng, "Young man, you are also a college student, and your future is limitless. Think carefully before doing anything. It's not easy for your parents to raise you so much. Don't act impulsively and regret it too late." Do you know, upon hearing the mention of his parents, Shifeng lowered his head and couldn't see his expression clearly under the dim yellow street light. As he gently rubbed his wrist, he said in a gentle tone, "Uncle, I know. Thank you very much." Liang Yongtao, who was in his soul, saw the crazy and sinister gaze of Shifeng at this moment. He was so anxious that he stood in front of his body and punched and kicked Shifeng, but every time it was like air passing through. "I can only have red eyes and watch helplessly as everything happens again." Liang Yongtao still said step by step, "Okay. Then you go back first. If you have anything to do, call your girlfriend and talk about it carefully. Don't involve the other girl in your affairs, you have nothing to do with her." Right after Liang Yongtao finished speaking, he leaned slightly against his waist and went to pick up his package, sighing inwardly, "My poor button meat. It's really unlucky." At this moment, the quiet alley startled Guojiang when his phone rang. In the quiet and empty alleyway at night, the gentle ringing of the bell was particularly harsh on weekdays. Guojiang was in a panic and wanted to hang up the call, but because he was too nervous, he somehow connected his phone. Soon, a slightly coquettish female voice from the handset said, "Jiang, why haven't you come back? I'm hungry." Guojiang's hair stood on end when he heard Xian Lu's voice on the phone, and he looked up at Shifeng in fear. Before I had any ideas in my mind, I saw the kind-hearted uncle throw 2 boxes at Shifeng and hit him heavily. But he still couldn't stop his rushing figure. Through the dim yellow light, Guojiang saw Shifeng's knife light piercing straight towards him, with a grim expression and cursing loudly, "You bitch, you said you didn't hide Xian Lu. I killed you today." Liang Yongtao's current condition is extremely poor. Faced with the madness of Shifeng, he had no way to deal with him at the moment. Despite desperately avoiding the stabbing light, he eventually slowed down due to a waist injury. After a moment of confusion, Liang Yongtao lost consciousness and fell to the ground, his consciousness gradually becoming blurred. Seeing the shattered cardboard box in the distance, one can still clearly see the packaging bag inside. At first, one can still listen intermittently to the girl's screams and the chaotic footsteps coming in. And several angry male voices shouted loudly, "Police, crouch down with your head in your arms, don't move." Later on, everything turned into darkness and Liang Yongtao's final thought was, "You immortal and stubborn. If you keep meddling, I'll be a dog." Just before Liang Yongtao's consciousness completely disappeared, the electronic mechanical sound from before came back to his mind, beep 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 beep. Detected that the host was in danger of life and forced to turn on. Vital signs have disappeared. Deducting 10,000 points will activate the temporary soul protection device. The current points will be minus 9962. When I woke up again, my soul followed behind my daughters, watching with heartache the various insults and injustices I had suffered due to my involvement. After his own death, Guojiang, who was saved at the time, also suffered a head impact and became unconscious, unable to reveal the truth. Xian Lu, who was staying with Guojiang's family, reconciled with that crazy person again. The two spent a lot of money reversing black and white to incite public opinion, trying to remove themselves. Pushing the provocation and violence towards oneself, many netizens who do not know the truth are brought forward with rhythm and profanity, all of which are aimed at their 2 daughters. I usually think that my short videos have a large fan base of 70,80,000, but under the overwhelming online frenzy at this moment, they seem so insignificant. Even though he knew it was in his dream, when he saw Liang Yongtao again, his emotions remained unsettled for a long time. When Li Xianyang returned to the dormitory after finishing his meal, he saw Liang Yongtao lying in bed with furrowed eyebrows, sweat dripping down his head, his hair almost wet, and his clenched fists bulging like a nightmare. Quickly putting down his lunchbox and coming to Liang Yongtao's bed, he anxiously pushed his shoulder and shouted, "Comrade Liang, wake up quickly. What's wrong with you? Wake up quickly." As Li Xianyang watched Liang Yongtao's breathing become increasingly rapid, as if he was about to gasp for breath in the next second, he fiercely pinched Liang Yongtao's people. Li Xianyang was anxious in his heart, shouting as he continued to keep his hands busy. Before he could react, a strong wind hit his face. Suddenly, Li Xianyang felt a numbness in his chin and was forcefully hit 2 or 3 steps before finally stopping. Liang Yongtao stood up with a carp and suddenly sat up from the bed, breathing rapidly. After seeing the environment in front of him for a long time, and Li Xianyang, who was gasping for breath while covering his chin, it was only then that he realized the current situation. Hurriedly lifting the bed and coming to Li Xianyang, he apologized and said, "Comrade Li Xianyang, I'm really sorry. I had a nightmare just now and I don't know it was you. How are you feeling now? I'll take you to the medical room right away to take a look." Li Xianyang moved his chin up and down, feeling okay except for a slight numbness. So he said vaguely, "No need, Comrade Liang, I have a skin injury, which is far worse than the injuries we usually train with. Just apply some safflower oil yourself." "What happened to you just now?" I see you seem to be in pain in your dream. Chapter 9. Family Letters. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After Li Xiangyang was punched by Liang Yongtao, the two of them were even. They were comrades in the same dormitory again, so their relationship gradually improved. Liang Yongtao's originally cheerful personality was dull and suppressed due to various experiences. Li Xiangyang, like his name, is full of sunshine and vitality. Under the enthusiasm of Li Xiangyang, Liang Yongtao gradually adapted to the current pace of life, because with a goal, he lived every day with great energy and fulfillment. All the ferocity in his body was used on the training ground, so the training tasks of these days were completed excellently, attracting the attention of the chief of staff who came to inspect. After absorbing the energy of System 581, Liang Yongtao's physical fitness has greatly improved. I have only been in the military for just 3 months and have already received a commendation. The allowance has increased from 7 yuan per month to 15 yuan. I quickly adapted to my current life and saw the cloth shoes made by my third sister while packing my luggage. Liang Yongtao quickly remembered his third sister and 2 young sisters who were still in his hometown at the time. Over the past 2 months, my allowance has been gradually sent to my third sister and my good brother who grew up together, asking him to pass it on to my 2 younger sisters. I won't send money to that irresponsible father again this time. In my memory, the third sister had just given birth to her youngest daughter at this time, and it seems that her health has not been well since then. After lingering on the bed for several years, he passed away at a young age. I and my 2 younger sisters were able to grow up thanks to my third sister. If it weren't for having a third sister, I would have relied on my unreliable father to treat my younger siblings as strangers after getting married to selfishness. Perhaps I and my 2 younger sisters would have starved to death long ago. The third sister got married to the neighboring town, about 30 miles away. In my memory, every time I returned to my mother's house, I had to leave early, and it was almost dark before I could arrive. I remember that my brother-in-law came to my village to visit relatives and met my third sister. I have been seeing her for thousands of years since I first met her. In order to marry third sister back home, he once promised third sister that her younger siblings were his own, and for this, he had a big fight with his mother. Third sister is not in good health, and her brother-in-law sends food to her siblings every month or so. Because my 7th sister is the youngest and physically weak, I have to carefully calculate and eat the rice saved from my third sister's house. I often carry my 7th sister on my back, lead my 6th sister to the mountains to dig wild vegetables, and dig the remaining sweet potatoes with others. Even if it's just the thickness of my little finger, I cherish it very much and bring it home. When cooking, I would grab a handful of rice and put it in a palm-sized cloth pocket to cook congee with sweet potatoes and wild vegetables. After the congee is cooked, the rice in the cloth bag will be poured out separately for the youngest 7 younger sisters to eat. 6 younger sisters ate the thick congee with wild vegetables and sweet potatoes, and they could make a round belly even with water. Liang Yongtao calculated that it was probably time for his father to tell his 6th sister about his mother-in-law's family in his previous life. Talking about getting married is actually no different from selling it out. I still remember in my previous life when I joined the military, I received letters from home every 2 months. It's all written by my own father, occasionally mixed with a few words of concern. Most of the time, it's about the food shortage at home, and my 2 sisters have to pay tuition fees to eat enough, so I have to send the allowance back. Until a year later when it was time to collect letters from home, I couldn't receive any letters from my family for a long time. I really can't trust my 2 younger sisters. After writing a letter to his good brother Hilauchi, who grew up together, he found out that his father had been sending allowances to his home since he started. As long as the weather was good, even if he walked 7 or 8 miles, he would have to go to the tea house on the street to play cards. He doesn't care because he often loses his accounting position in the village due to being so unregulated. When my father was in the army, he gradually found his 2 young sisters-in-law's house to give him some money as a gift. The 15-year-old sixth sister found a 28-year-old man. The surname Tian was found for the 13-year-old seventh sister. The Tian family is an widowed mother with 4 brothers and an unmarried younger sister. Because my family is really poor, and there are still 2 in their 20s who haven't mentioned being a daughter-in-law yet. They gritted their teeth and married their 7th sister to become a child bride. It is said that my father took a liking to the Tian family at that time because they lived a prosperous life and hung a lot of preserved meat on the beams of the house. Later, he found out that it was actually fermented pork. The widowed mother of the Tian family is a gentle and kind person. When Chi Mei went to their house, Tian Mu felt sorry for her being too young and left her in her own room to sleep in for several years, raising her as her own daughter. It was not until Chi Mei was 18 years old that she was allowed to choose either of her 2 sons as her husband. The 3rd and 4th members of the Tian family watched as the 7th sister grew up more and more graceful, and worked hard every day to win her favor. In the end, Chi Mei chose the milder-tempered 3rd. The 4th member of the Tian family is also stubborn. No matter who introduces him to someone, he always says, "I want someone like Hongying. I don't want someone without Hongying's beauty." Since he uttered this sentence, Chi Mei has become the representative of fox spirits in that village. The women in the village are very strict about their men and sons, and they guard against their 7th sister. I am afraid that my son, a man from my own family, will be deceived by his younger sister and become so obsessed that he cannot touch the north like the Tian brothers. The 4th son of the Tian family really wasted his whole life. The old man from the house that Lu Mei found, surnamed Hong, is the youngest in the family. Everyone calls him Hong Lao Si, a well-known lazy man in the village. Relying on my elder brother, who was a branch secretary, and my second brother, who was a soldier, to be pampered by my mother and idol. At an advanced age, he has not yet married a wife, and many of his peers have 2 children. Because the reputation of being a lazy person spread far and wide, the girls from good families around him were unwilling to propose marriage to him. A cousin of the same clan from the same village came from the same family. Hong Laoxi's mother saw that her youngest son was about to start his 3rd year and had not yet started a family. She asked people to help each other around and thanked the media for their high gifts. So it also attracted many matchmakers who were willing to help introduce them. Among them is myself, the cousin who grits her teeth and earns money from an unscrupulous matchmaker, and the hardships that my 2 younger sisters lead are all thanks to her. Although my 6 younger sisters have beautiful facial features, due to family conditions, their slim figure is considered difficult to raise. Hong Laoxi's mother didn't originally have much interest in Lu Mei, but she couldn't resist her son's liking and could only grit her teeth to admit it. 6 younger sisters have been working as cattle and horses for their family since they got married. When he got married, Hong Laoxi was a bit considerate of her. After a long time, I get tired of it and spend the whole day with 3 or 5 fox friends who are not at home. Leave 6 sisters at home to serve a large family. By the time I found out that I was back, I was already married. In that era, even if I wasn't old enough to get a marriage certificate, as long as I had a banquet, I was considered married. Divorce has a significant impact on a girl's reputation. Moreover, in situations like this, even if one forcibly takes the 6th sister home, as long as one leaves, who knows if that bastard father will still sell the 6th sister again. I can only threaten Hong Laoxi myself. But strong dragons do not suppress local snakes, and distant waters cannot save nearby fires. I remember a few years later when I had already retired from the military, I once went to see my 6th sister. As soon as I arrived at the door, I saw Hong Laoxi, the shrewd old lady, cursing in the yard with her little nephew on her back, "You lazy woman. Lying in bed in broad daylight without getting up to work, waiting for someone to take care of me, and treating me like a young lady. Don't get up to eat if you have the ability, just lie in bed for a day." Turning his head, he saw himself standing behind with a gloomy expression, and then he closed his mouth with a sarcastic tone. Afterwards, he repeatedly declined to let himself go in to see the 6th sister. At first, it was said that Lu Mei was no longer at home and went to work in the fields. But when I was sitting in the yard and planning to wait, I changed my mind and said that Lu Mei was at the market and would not be back until the afternoon. The words flickered, and the contradiction between them immediately made me wary. I will never forget the moment when I forcefully pushed away the room where my sixth sister lived and frowned in front of her with a bloody smell. My sixth sister's lips were pale and she lay on the bed on the brink of death. When she saw herself coming in, her lips stuttered and she only called out in a small voice, "Fifth brother," and tears streamed down her face. The whole person was pale like glass, as if about to shatter. At that time, my heart also tugged fiercely. It had only been a year since I last saw her, and my sixth sister actually looked several years old. Even though the body was thin, there was a slight baby fat on the cheeks. Now my whole face has collapsed, making my already big eyes appear even bigger. However, now the sixth sister's eyes were dim and lifeless, and she lay on the bed with a lingering aura. She saw her eyes full of dependence, as if a child had been lost for a long time, and finally saw an adult. Chapter 10. Six Sisters' Past Encounters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At that time, I didn't have time to settle accounts with Hong Laosi. I picked up my sixth sister and pushed away Hong Lao Lao, who was blocking the way, so I hurried towards the town hospital. Let Madame Hong talk nonsense behind her, I said Liang Laowu. How could you be such a brother? Your sister is just weak. Do you need to carry a woman to the hospital on those special days that are normal for women every month? Although you are siblings, your sister has already married, so what should be avoided should still be avoided. What do you look like, hugging your mother-in-law like this in public? Our family's reputation needs more. At that time, hearing such nonsense, even if it was hatred in my heart, it was not as important as the dying sixth sister in my arms. I remember at that time, I just had time to glare at old Hong with hatred, and that look was as crazy as a trapped beast. Scared old Madame Hong to the point where she dared not make any more noise, as if she dared to stir and tangle around, as if she would be twisted and her neck would be broken in the next second. In fact, old Madame Hong felt good at the time, and she did have a killing intent at that time. Fortunately, Madame Hong did not continue to challenge her own limits. At that time, on the way to the hospital, I ran into Seven Sister with her husband and a few brothers, carrying a pole and pushing a cart, rushing towards Six Sisters' house in a fierce manner. As soon as the two sides met, Chi Mei got on the cart and placed Lu Mei on the cart, leaning against Chi Mei's embrace. Without even having time to settle accounts with the Hong family, she hurriedly rushed to the hospital. Seven younger sisters saw the blood on their clothes and looked at six younger sisters' face, and immediately burst into tears. The group rushed to the town hospital with a heavy heart and quickly rushed to the emergency room. Finally, after undergoing blood transfusion and rescue, Lu Mei was able to escape the danger of her life. When she went to buy the necessary supplies for hospitalization for her sixth sister, she told the doctor that she had given birth due to overwork while working in the field during pregnancy. I already know that it's absolutely impossible for those few special days for women that old Madame Hong mentioned. If it's just a period break, how could it be weak like that? The blood smell is so heavy, and the amount of health can be imagined. Thinking of how long it has been since I arrived at Lu Mei's house, Hong Laosi has never appeared in person. And the little niece and daughter who was playing with mud in the corner of the hospital, I had already planned to beat up Hong Laosi after being discharged from the hospital. Six sisters stayed in the hospital for 10 days before the doctor allowed them to go home. When they had just settled their accounts and arrived at the door of the ward, they accidentally overheard a conversation between 6 and 7 sisters, and a burst of anger rushed to their heads. Through the thin door panels of the hospital, I only heard Seventh Sister say, "Sixth Sister, why don't you divorce that turtle son? Look at how he treats you, does he treat you like his mother-in-law? You've been hospitalized for so long, he hasn't come back to see you even once. I divorced him, and their family would never let me take Xiaoling and Xiaofei away. Besides, even if I take it away, where can I go? Can you still say what our father looks like? There are a total of 2 rooms in the family. 5 brothers and 5 sisters. Law have just been married for a year, and my father lives in 1 room. Where will I stay when I go back? Liume's tone was full of confusion and desolation. 7 sisters watched as 6 sisters had been raised for these days, only to finally feel a little blood red after just being raised. She gritted her teeth and said, if it's really not possible. If it's really not possible, you can come and stay at my house. Liu Mei smiled bitterly and said, don't say anything foolish. How could my sister divorce and live with her? What does it look like when you say it out loud? Do you still have a reputation in the village? Chi Mei smashed her jar and said, fame. What else can I have? The reputation of a fox spirit. My reputation has long been stinky on the streets. Chi Mei, don't do this, it's not your fault. Then sisters hugged her head and cried bitterly. I was outside the door at that time, even though my fists were clenched with blood, I couldn't help but feel sorry for the situation of my 2 sisters. When I sorted out my mood and planned to enter the ward, I heard 7th sister whispering, 6th sister, tell me the truth, what's going on with you this time? If it's just a fall, how could it be sitting right on a bamboo branch? I'm not a child anymore, I don't believe this reason. The doctor said your uterus was severely injured and your lower body was torn. To be honest, did that bastard use force on you? Upon hearing this, I finally understood why when the doctor found out that he was the patient's brother, he would be so secretive about Liu Mei's condition. In the 1990s, in remote rural areas, gynecological diseases were difficult to talk about. The thought of how Hong Laosi, that bastard, dared to treat his 6th sister like this immediately escalated his anger. If it weren't for my strong self-control, I might have rushed to the Hong family and killed that bastard Hong Laosi. The 6th sister in the ward hesitated for a long time when she saw the 7th sister's insistence on breaking the sand pot and asking the end. Awkwardly, he stuttered in a very low voice and said, that's not true. It's just that he recently brought back some strange things from outside, made of wood. Like men's things. I don't know where he got it back. That night, when he and I were there, he brought it up and said he learned it in a video studio, and even said that foreigners like this later on. It just happened at first, it hurt a bit, and I thought it was because I was on my body. It wasn't until midnight that my blood started to flow more and more. He blamed me for disappointing and left early in the morning. The next day, I couldn't get up to bed, thanks to my sister. Law next door agreeing to help me find you. I'm really sorry to say it, I can only tell her that I fell and may have had a miscarriage. Upon hearing this, my mind was blank at the time, and I didn't even know how I entered the ward. Without saying a word, I hugged my 6th sister and was discharged from the hospital. Along the way, the 6th and 7th sisters looked at their gloomy faces, both embarrassed and afraid. They were both raised by the 5th brother since childhood, and they never knew that when the 5th brother was truly angry, his face was calm and his expression was completely indistinguishable. The sisters were like quails all the way and dared not speak. When I brought my 6th sister home, I saw my little niece leaning alone on the threshold, holding a small bowl and drinking corn paste. Mrs. Hong held her 2-year-old nephew in her arms, smiling like a chrysanthemum and gently coaxing him to eat egg custard. Hong Laosi was sitting at the dining table, squinting his eyes slightly, drinking small wine and eating peanuts, while crossing his legs and humming a tune. After seeing herself carrying her 6th sister back to the room, Hong Lao pulled a stinky face and cursed there. Seeing that he had no reaction, he suddenly became more and more enthusiastic, and his mouth became even more unbearable with foul language. After settling down my 6th sister, I brought my little niece back to my room and handed her over to my 7th sister. Looking back, she also carried her nephew who was eating egg custard into the room and closed the door, but old lady Hong still hadn't realized it. Immediately, he walked up to Hong Lao, whose face was flushed from drinking, and grabbed Hong Lao's collar, lifting him up and throwing him heavily into the yard.